and we're going to get ready and cover two more sections of chapter 7 today. And conceptually, it's something that we've done over and over and over already, dealing with methods. But we're just going to tie it into something that we recently learned. What we recently learned was a new data type called an array. And just like any other data type we have, we're going to be taking a look at, in section 7.3, passing the array into a method. And in section 7.5, we're going to be returning arrays from methods. And some of you have already done that in your programs for 7.1, some of you early birds, and that's great. You did a good job and you're finding out. Another thing about program 7.1 is make sure you're opening the file, going through counting how many elements there are, but make sure you're reading into a dummy variable. Otherwise, it'll just count the first element and you'll be in an infinite loop. So make sure you're reading everything in, and you'll get a count, and then you'll close it, and then you'll initialize your array size with that count. And I think the number is like 1403, but I shouldn't see 1403 in any of your programs. Okay, that should be a result of you opening the file, counting everything, and then closing it. Once you initialize the array, then you're going to open it again and read everything in and store it in the array, and then start to work with it. So you're building on what we did last class, which was last Wednesday, and some of what you're doing today. On Wednesday, we're going to take a look at two-dimensional arrays, which are something kind of cool. But coming back to this section 7.3, you typed in a code listing. It was code listing 7.9. So you should be familiar. You should have seen exactly what you need to do. And the notes I have, we declare an array, an int array, int square bracket, numbers equals new int array size 10. And then I'm going to call a method that's going to pass in the array name. So I have a method called get values, and I'm going to pass in the array name, which is numbers. Now, quick reminder, when I just use the name of the array, what is it? It's
A reference variable.
It's a reference variable. It references the address of numbers. So the numbers address is going in. Where does it land? Well, I'm going to come down and take a look at my method heading, public static void, get values, parentheses, int, square bracket, array. So this tells me I'm bringing in an integer array. I'm bringing in the address for it. Now, I might change that address, and that's where I could screw it up. But one of the things about passing an array in, all of the values that I change inside of my array stick. Because when I return, all I'm returning is the address. Again, any changes I make to memory inside of the method stay in that new memory. So I pass the address in. When it returns back to where it was called, my address for numbers is still the same, but all the values in the array are different. Section 7.5. As I mentioned, this is returning an array. And some of you that really picked up on 7.3 say, well, if I can manipulate the values by passing in the array name as a parameter, as an argument into my parameter list, and I can manipulate it and return and all the changes stick, why would I need to return an array? It's just an option. It's one of those where we were able to return everything else. We can return an array if we want. Otherwise, 7.3 is sufficient for all you need to do. But let's see how to return array. There was an example of it in code listing 7.14. And we're going to take a look at, I need to declare the array double square bracket values. You notice I don't give it a size or anything like that yet. All I'm doing is setting up an address. Then in my main, I may have something like values, which is the address, equals get array. And I forgot some parentheses on the end of my get array. So I'm going to call this method get array, knowing I'm going to return the address of an array that's going to store doubles. So now going down into what the method body might look like public static, my return type. Okay, now public static void. I'm returning a double square bracket, square bracket. I'm returning an array that's going to be an array of doubles. My method name get array, empty parentheses, nothing coming in. Inside the body, I now have to officially declare my array and everything that's going to go in it. Double square bracket array equals new double square bracket size 10. So when I do this second part, new double square bracket 10, that's where that /0 comes into play. So it knows when it reached the end of its array. I can do whatever I want inside the body, but then I'm going to return just the address array. It's going to fly up and it's going to land back up in my main in the values, which was an array address as well. Questions? Anybody? So where does this come into play? All right. So if you remember in the last class, you wrote a program and the program was to work with an array where you filled it. And then I asked you to have separate loops to find the largest, to find the smallest, to get the average. Well, what I want you to now do is go back and make that program look pretty by filling it with a bunch of methods. So the first thing I'm going to do is practice returning an array. Here's what your main should be. Array equals fill array, empty parentheses. So I'm going to have a method called fill array that's going to return an array. And we already know we're going to fill it with 10 numbers. So just do the same kind of code as what we looked at on the other side of in the notes that I gave you for today. Then I'm going to have a value large equals, here's a method called get largest that I pass the array in. Small equals, I have a method get smallest and I'm going to pass the array in. I have a value average where I'm going to call equals get average method, pass the array in. And then finally, I'm going to have a void method called display that I'm going to send in the largest, the smallest, the average, and the actual array so that I can display the 10 numbers. Now, as some of you know with 7.1, this is really similar to what you're doing in 7.1. But now that we're covering it, I'd like to make sure you go and make 7.1 arrays, because what you're going to get tomorrow with 7.2 is going to add to this a little bit more. So you have a program due tonight. I think 7 out of 19 of you have completed it. And then your last program will be due next Sunday. Sunday. Questions?